You're perfect, just the way you are.
Sony Pictures Animation is back in the spotlight. With recent hits like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse under its belt, all eyes are on its future endeavors. It's safe to say love for these movies is in the air. But what about the love in those movies? Oh, it's certainly there. The air quality just varies. I'm Keefe Nosy with Wicked Binge, and this is Sony Pictures Animation Couples, Healthy to Toxic. As usual, we'll start with the relationships that are sweeter than honey. These are the healthy relationships. Kicking things off, we have the purest and youngest relationship on the list, Dennis Dracula and Winnie Werewolf. Love from monsters must run in the family because these two are just so darn sweet together. Dennis finds himself bullied by other kids often, and it's always Winnie who sticks up for him, be it by threatening those bullies and protecting him from harm at every turn, or following after him when he runs away from his birthday party out of fear.
Dennis, where are you going?
She's not the only one here with passion, though. Seeing Bella try to hurt Winnie is actually what inspires Dennis to grow his fangs and fight for her, showing that there's a lot of pure love between these two, even if they're not quite old enough to give it a romantic label yet. The silver medalist of health is the relationship between Rick and Linda Mitchell. Relationships are always put to the test, without exception. That being said, if your test involves fighting against a rebellion of machines fighting against humanity, you're definitely in the minority, I'll just say that. Thankfully, Rick and Linda actually passed this test with flying colors. Linda acts as a voice of emotional reason to Rick, encouraging him to try and understand his children more. At the same time, she does support him immensely.
But we do love his initiative, right?
As she knows better than anyone that he genuinely means well despite his flaws. She has good reason for this too. Rick was willing to move away from his hand-built house in the wilderness to raise Katie, showing that family is above anything else for him at the end of the day. Fittingly, taking a halo and the bronze medal is a romance between Mary and Joseph from The Star. No, their names aren't a coincidence. This movie is a retelling of the story of Jesus Christ's birth, making his parents, Mary and Joseph, prominent characters as well. The movie focuses mainly on the animals who helped out in the journey, so we don't see a ton of deep interaction between the two. That said, they seem to have a very healthy and supportive relationship. They're able to laugh with each other, and although they don't always see eye to eye, they consistently support each other.
Hey, I'm scared too, but I'm here.
Most notably when Mary's frightened of the journey ahead, and Joseph comforts her with a little egging on from Bo. While they may not be official, next is the star-crossed couple of Din and Lena, and they have one of the most beautiful connections in all of Sony Pictures Animation history. From The Wish Dragon, one of the studio's newest movies, these two have been best friends since childhood, sharing a love of art, imagination, and flying kites. Tragically, Lena's family had to move away due to her father trying desperately to save his dying company, prompting Din to spend his whole life planning on eventually reconnecting with her. He's ultimately willing to use his final wish on Long to revive her father, showing just how much he cares about her. The only thing this blooming romance loses points for is the fact that Din initially tried to deceive Lena in order to get her attention. This doesn't last long by any means, but it's really the first fully negative thing we have to say about any of these relationships, so it just lands right outside of our top 3. Sliding a wee bit lower down the chimney is the relationship between Malcolm and Margaret CLAUS from Arthur Christmas. While Malcolm's relationship with his sons is a bit rocky, to say the least, there's no denying that he's got one heck of a supportive wife.
Well done, dear.
Malcolm is hesitant throughout the movie to pass on his role as Santa despite Steve's hard and much deserving work. When he expresses concern about who he'll be when that day comes, Margaret assures him that he'll still be her Malcolm. Like Linda before her, she acts as a voice of reason and comfort to her husband, and after the movie's end, the pair take up salsa dancing as a hobby, showing that there's still a spark between the North Pole's most iconic couple. From a spark to a zing, we now have Mavis and Johnny, a classic forbidden love scenario. At first, Dracula's sheltered daughter Mavis finds herself smitten with Johnny, a guest at her 118th birthday party, who eventually reveals himself to be a human.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Naturally, Drac isn't too thrilled about this at first, prompting Johnny, being the absolute saint he is, to cruelly dump Mavis in front of her whole party so she wouldn't be hurt by Drac forbidding the relationship. If it ain't obvious, this relationship's downsides aren't really the fault of either Johnny nor Mavis, but rather Dracula's initial hesitation towards supporting it. For the sake of his daughter's happiness, he does ultimately come to bring the two back together and support them. And with that aside, Mavis and Johnny have about the sweetest relationship you could ask for. Mavis insists that despite Johnny's occasional hiccups, she wouldn't change a thing about him, and when Johnny goes on a rampage in Transformania, Mavis is the only one who can calm him down until Drac apologizes. The zing doesn't lie. Lace just in. Our next spot in the healthy section goes to Flint Lockwood and Sam Sparks. Childhood teasing is completely normal, but too much of it can really mess with your development. Sadly, in Sam's case, it resulted in her hiding her geeky interests for the sake of being as cute and perky as the world wants her to be, but that's exactly what makes her relationship with Flint, one we hold in high regard, as he helps her learn to accept herself for who she is and stop denying her nerdy interests. There are a few bumps in the road though. Flint's ego and Chester V's manipulation have both managed to put a few mild wedges between them on different occasions.
Your friends are distracting you from our mission.
It's not enough to really harm their relationship, just enough to call it the most flawed on the list so far. While it's debatable whether these next two even belong on this list, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen. I know they aren't really official yet, like Gwen says herself, every other universe has Spider-Gwen fall for Spider-Man, and it never ends well, but these two have a solid friendship, able to talk to each other about problems they can't really bring to pretty much anyone else.
You're the only friend I've ever really made after Peter died.
For understandable reasons, Gwen isn't ready to jump into a full-on relationship with Miles, but maybe the rescue mission she'll be going on in Beyond the Spider-Verse will give her just the push she needs. There's a first time for everything after all, but either way, we can't really give a higher spot to a romance that neither side is fully ready for yet. They at least have a chance though, which is sadly more than can be said for the tragedy of Andres and Marta from Vivo. These two were a pair of performers in Havana, Cuba. They were separated due to Marta receiving an offer to travel to Florida, really giving a boost to her up-and-coming musical career. But tragically, in support of his friend, Andres allowed her to go without ever confessing his feelings for her. On one hand, this is a very selfless move on his part, and naturally, Marta had every right to chase her dreams, but the fact that Andres was never able to tell her how he really felt, save for Beyond the Grave, thanks to Vivo delivering his song to her, is nothing short of heartbreaking. One can only guess how much their love would have blossomed had Andres considered his own feelings just a bit more important. Next up is the Smurfs' chosen human family, Patrick and Grace Winslow. As a couple in a family movie, Patrick and Grace have the exact relationship dynamic you'd expect. The Smurfs come into their lives, Patrick is like, oh no! Grace is like, oh, come on! And eventually Patrick does come around. Even the second movie repeats this dynamic, just in a different context.
It's your dad.
No, that's one thing he is not.
There's not a ton to say, really, as their relationship is mostly secondary in the Smurfs movies, but that at least means there's no major conflict between them, which is nice. They seem to hold a perfectly balanced relationship despite their differences, keeping them squarely in the healthy section. Now we have to let go of that last entry to talk about Zach and Hannah from Goosebumps. Moving to a new town is rough, but there are some upsides to it, right? Sometimes the weather is nicer, and sometimes the neighbors are, too. Heck, one of them's Jack Black in this case, and on top of that, his daughter Hannah falls for Zach almost instantly.
Oh, Zach, that's so sweet.
Their romance is really sweet, and given how sheltered Hannah is by her father, R.L. Stein, it brings her a lot of joy to have someone to connect with. Sadly, it doesn't last long, since Hannah, like Stein's monsters, was created by him out of loneliness. As a result, when the monsters are unleashed, she has to be sealed in the books along with them for the good of the world. It's a tragic ending, but there were at least some happy moments between the two before it had to end. Poor guy's never gonna be able to ride a Ferris wheel without crying again. You just can't bear the wait for our next entry, right? Okay, it's Boog and Ursa from Open Season 3. When Boog leaves the forest to join his circus after feeling neglected by his friends, he meets Ursa. Initially, this professional circus performer doesn't hit it off with Boog, especially thinking that he's her former partner Doug at first.
Doug, why do you always let me down?
But over time, they form a genuine connection, with Ursa even leaving the circus for good to live in the forest with Boog and his friends. Nothing like a good old found family story. Staying on that trend, the last of the fully healthy relationships is Count Dracula and Ericka Van Helsing. Like his daughter before him, Drac fell for a forbidden love too, except for a different reason. The Van Helsing family has been hunting monsters for generations, and Drac is no exception, especially since he's defeated Abraham Van Helsing in the past.
I will hunt you for all eternity!
Prompting Abraham to enlist the help of his great-granddaughter Ericka to take his longtime adversary down. Despite the initial deception and obvious attempted murder, Ericka ends up falling for Drac as well, and the two actually manage to build a very sweet relationship, with Ericka even helping beat her great-granddad in the end and ultimately help him find redemption. From here on out, Ericka and Drac are supportive of each other through all their adventures, cementing their place at the tail end of the healthy section, even if it started out about as rough as it possibly could have. There is still some love in these next couples, but things get a little more conflicted in the gray area. First up in this section, we'd like to talk briefly about Bob and Bobby from the Open Season series. That is, if Bobby will let us get a word in. These two are the owners of Mr. Winnie, and a running gag over the course of the series. Bobby's an extremely doting pet owner, and Bob is her supportive husband, whom she never lets get a single word out over the course of the 4-movie series. Still, they seem to enjoy each other's company and have a fun time hunting down Bigfoot.
We're looking for Bigfoot.
Best of luck to them on that front. Actually, maybe they should tag along for our last trip to Hotel Transylvania to visit Wayne and Wanda Werewolf. Now, it's easy to see why they're so exhausted all the time. With like 40-something kids to deal with, anyone would be at their limit. They're able to have fun on the cruise ship together when they leave their children at daycare.
So, What do we do now?
So there's definitely chemistry between the two. Even so, it seems like their parenting has really come between them a little bit. In Transformania, Wayne takes advantage of his human transformation to leave Wanda on her own to take care of the kids. Anyone in his situation would surely jump at the chance for a break, but leaving your partner in the dust like that isn't exactly justified. Next up, I think we technically have to talk about Jean and Jailbreak. I mean, we don't have to. Like, does anyone care about the Emoji Movie? Well, just in case, these two are kind of like the dollar store version of Emmett and Wildstyle from the Lego Movie. For these two, however, they only really bond over the fact that both of them are hiding who they really are for the sake of fitting into their society. They don't end up actually dating, since Jailbreak hesitates to admit her feelings for Jean, I think. It's surprisingly unclear, honestly.
I like you just the way you are.
If nothing else, they've got a solid friendship and helped each other accept themselves. So, cool. And while we're on the topic, let's quickly mention Mel and Mary Meh. Why did we place these two so low, you may ask? They were made for each other after all, but it turns out that Mel was hiding his own identity from Mary the entire time.
Why didn't you tell me?
Until the movie's third act. Being upfront about this would have not only helped their son with his identity crisis, but would have been a great help to his relationship. At least they make up by the end of the movie. Even though they literally can't show their love, it is there. Up next are two of Open Season's most prominent characters, Elliot and Giselle. To be honest, these two feel like an odd couple to place this low. They love their kids, and they do seem to dearly love each other, but at the same time, it's very clear that there are some communication issues here. By which we mean, it's very clear that Elliot has some communication issues.
And for some things you forgot to say 2 weeks ago?
And also some maturity issues. He actually abandons Giselle at the altar and starts to be pretty mean to her in Open Season 2 under the guise of searching for Mr. Weenie. At the end of the day though, they genuinely do care about each other, although Elliot is practically more like a fourth kid to Giselle, and she even commissions her kids to make sure he doesn't get into trouble sometimes. It's nice that they have genuine love and care for each other, and Elliot is able to come through at the end of the day and show her this, but there's no question that this will be a rocky relationship. Speaking of leaving women at the altar, let's talk about the Mighty Eagle and Zeta from Angry Birds 2 to round out our gray area. While Elliot at least had some excuse for flaking on Giselle, the Mighty Eagle was anything but mighty, only abandoning Zeta out of sheer cowardice. While, to his credit, he does apologize to her and professes his true love for her.
Go ahead. Do your worst to me.
That doesn't change just how horrible of a thing this would be to do to anyone, let alone the love of your life. Zeta isn't innocent either, though, considering she, planned to destroy all life on Bird and Piggy Island to make a resort for herself. I guess everyone's got their own way of healing from breakups, huh? At least the two make up by the end, which separates them from our final 3 entries. Get ready for things to get nasty in the toxic relationships. The Bronze Medal of Toxicity goes to Sarah and Tyler from Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween! At first, they seem like a cute couple, right? Tyler gave Sarah a ticket for a concert he knew she wanted to see and was excited to go with her, which is why it's even more confusing that he decided to make out with another girl at said concert. Now, we get that Sarah's mother is a bit strict and Tyler might have figured she wasn't coming at a certain point, but on what planet does that justify cheating? Further still, such an absolutely stupid plan to cheat at the concert you invited your girlfriend to. Maybe dude's a masochist and this is some sort of personal thing? I mean, I'm not gonna judge, but I might. In any case, we here at Wicked Binge do not condone actual real-life violence. That being said, good work, Slappy. You've got your good qualities too. Honestly though, cheating almost seems preferable compared to the absolute train wreck that is Thomas and Bee from Peter Rabbit. Animated movies require a certain level of suspended disbelief to be enjoyed. Adorable talking rabbits with the capability to wage war on an entire bloodline?
But Wreck is gone?
He's in a better place now.
Sure. Someone as nice as Bee seeing absolutely anything in Thomas? Heck no! Thomas is extremely rude, arrogant, and absolutely hates rabbits, but of course, wanting to get with Bee, he hides all of these things from her and won't even try to get along with the rabbits. The result is him attempting to blow up their home with explosives, which causes a domino effect that ultimately destroys Bee's studio. For some god's-forsaken reason, they do end up together by the end, and while I'm not going to pretend I'm rooting for him, at least there's a little hope here. He does seem to genuinely care for her at the end of the day, and that alone places him miles ahead of our most toxic pick. Without contest, the gold medal of toxicity goes to the non-existent one-sided romance between Charles Darwin and Queen Victoria from The Pirates, Band of Misfits. Good old Chuck initially acts as an antagonist of the film, trying to trick the pirate captain into giving away his beloved dodo bird parrot, Polly, to present as a scientific discovery in the Queen's competition. It turns out that this was ultimately meant as a gift for Queen Victoria, who's been stringing Darwin along on account of him being hopelessly in love with her and willing to do anything for a personal audience with the Queen, if you get what I'm saying.
I will get you the dodo, Your Majesty.
Ultimately, she actually planned to eat Polly as an exotic dish, and even attempts to kill Charles when he works with the pirate captain to help rescue Polly. This all leaves him absolutely heartbroken, and probably with some other parts broken too. Now, it may have never blossomed the way one party wanted it to, but this kind of romantic rejection is so heavy-hitting that it has to cap off our list.